All right, thank you guys for joining us today. This webinar is going to walk you through the Customer Service Hub, and I'm excited to introduce our presenter, John Wolgamuth. John's been with True North since last October, and we are glad that we snagged him. He comes to us with over 15 years of experience, so I will let you take it away, John.
Thank you very much. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for being here. Good to kind of meet you, and we'll get right into the demonstration. So I think I will start by answering kind of what is the biggest, the overview umbrella question of the whole presentation, which is, what is the Customer Service Hub? So the Customer Service Hub is an application that is in Dynamics 365, and it's not the only one. There are many of these apps, and they're all custom tailored for sales, customer service, field service, etc. Essentially, they are all these little individual windows into your data that is finally crafted to match exactly a purpose. And so with Customer Service Hub, of course, it is tailored to match your customer service employees or users. Now, even though these applications all show different things, they're all retrieving their data from the same database. In Dynamics, we call it the Dataverse. Essentially, Dataverse is the universal backend for all of your D365 data. So let's look at some examples. So if I go to my top here, in Dynamics, you have an app selector. By default here, since I'm in Customer Service Hub, it says Customer Service Hub. But if I click that, that's going to show me all of the different apps. Now, again, they serve different purposes. They have different names, and there are different things in them. But they are all just tailored windows into the same database that is in the backend. But the idea here is you could have 1,000 tables in your Dataverse, and people don't need to see all of them. You know, you have tables that are specific to field service. You have tables that are specific to sales, and likewise with customer service. So what Customer Service Hub is just a nice, clean interface where you see everything that you need for your customer service purposes, and you don't have a bunch of clutter in there, so you don't have to scramble around and dig through things to try and find what you're getting to. It's intended to be nice, clean, and easy to use. So back into the app, what you'll see here is kind of just the general UI that you can expect from any application within Dynamics. And it all uses what they call the unified interface. And so the unified interface, it's going to look the same regardless of what you are accessing Dynamics using. So there's lots of different ways to get into Dynamics. Of course, you can use a computer, which is exactly what I'm doing here. And this is how it's going to look if you're on a computer. But you can also access it using mobile devices. You know, it could be a cell phone. It could be a tablet. And with the introduction of the unified interface, Microsoft has made it so you're going to have a similar experience across all those different devices. Now, what you see on my screen here is not exactly what you would see in a phone because it's wider. All right, so a phone is going to be a little more long form. There's going to be more scrolling, but everything's going to look the same and all the same data will be there. So by using the unified interface, you really have that just by default without having to do any sort of custom development or anything, universal experience between your devices. Another thing I want to point out, and this may be obvious to some of you, but Dynamics is a Microsoft utility. It is Microsoft software. It is a Microsoft platform. And so the huge benefit of using a cloud-based Microsoft platform is that you also get easy interaction with the other Microsoft utilities. So here in Dynamics, if I go up to the top left here, I can see some of the other things that I can collaborate with using Dynamics. So really anything that says Microsoft on it, Outlook, we can integrate with Teams, with OneNote. There's SharePoint integration for document storage. You can even, attach PowerPoints and things like that. And this is all native. So you don't have to build integrations. You don't have to spend a bunch of money and time and have a team develop integrations with these other Microsoft products because it's all native. It's all set up. So essentially, if you want to use it, you flip it on and you're using it. And that cannot be understated. That's a huge benefit to using Dynamics. So just so you're aware of that. The other thing is just basic layout. What you're going to see here on the left side is all of the tables that are exposed in this app. Now, of course, this is not every table that is in the Dataverse. This is not every table that is in Dynamics. This is just all the stuff that we need for customer service. So again, circling back on that concept of this is intended to be a simple presentation of everything you need and nothing that you do not need. If I were to go into a different app, I would see different tables listed here. But these are the primary tables for customer service, and so that is what we're going to be working with today. Now, if I click on one of these, and I'm going to start with cases, you'll see my screen update. And what this is showing you is a view. If you have never used Dynamics, but you have used, say, Excel, then this is not going to look unfamiliar to you. What I have here is a list of records, and I have the same standard Excel functionality that I would be used to using even if I've never used Dynamics. I can click on columns and I can sort. I can filter those columns. I can add and remove columns. And after doing that, I can save my own views. So if you need to make an update to a view that is specific to you, but it doesn't necessarily need to be for everybody else, you can create your own personal views and really fine tune this to be exactly what you need without affecting the experience of other users. And after you've saved one of those, you can put that here in your view selector. So if I come in here, I can select all my cases. I can select my active cases. We can even see things like cases that have not been assigned to a user. That is also completely customizable, just like everything else. And if there are views that people don't need to use, we get rid of them. If there's views that are not in there that people do need, we create them and we add them. You also have the ability here to edit filters and the columns of these views. So, for example, here, all of my cases are normal priority. But say I had some that were high priority and some that were low priority. I could put a filter on this view to only show me cases that are high priority. That way I can go in and attend to those first. And it just gives you a method of being able to handle these and work them all in an efficient fashion. So what are cases? This probably seems like a dumb question, but just to make sure that I'm explaining what they are, they're really, cases are the bread and butter of customer service. And it's a dynamic entity. So you might initially have thought, well, that's a stupid question of cases, if somebody calls in with a complaint. But it's not always a complaint. Really, cases are a dynamic entity that can house all sorts of interactions you might have with a customer contact. that requires action. So it could be a complaint, like I said, or it could be inquiries. It could be an issue with a product or a request for information. Any sort of interaction that you would have that you need to take action on, that you need to put into a list and make sure that it is acted upon by a person or even the system, depending on how you have it set up, to be able to resolve that case, answer the question, fix the complaint, tell them how to fix the issue that they're having with the product. It can all be housed within cases. Now, there are a lot of different ways to create cases. There are the primary ways, and that is really what we're going to discuss today. You can create them manually, but you also have the ability to auto create them, say from an email that comes into a queue. And I will we'll start with the very most standard approach to creating a case. And that is essentially, maybe I'm working in a call center and somebody calls me and I have them on the phone and I need to enter in a case for them. So really all I would have to do is I'm going to go to my cases here and I'm going to click new case. Now, what this is going to do is open up a blank case form. Of course, this is where we store all of our case information. So we're going to call this okay. And then the case number, you can see that that's locked because this is actually auto-generated by the system. So that's something that you configure so that you have a unique identifier for all the cases that are created. You'll never have two cases with the same number or identifying number because it's the system creating them. And it's going to look at the last one that it created, it's going to update that, and it's going to create a new one. So you never have to worry about a person accidentally putting in the same number as a previous case. So let's go with let's do a test subject. Okay. And then we need to, oh, here we go. A bit of a delay there. This is going to be a query for information. And then we want to put in who this case is for. This does contain all the same standard CRM functionality that you would expect, whereas you do have a list of contacts and you have a list of accounts or companies or organizations, however you want to call it. And those customers, those contacts are related to those accounts. So just like you'd see in any other CRM, you have all of that here, but now we are actually applying cases to those records. So I'm going to go on here and I'm going to pick this one. And when I do that, you'll see that this card appears up top here. And what that's going to do is give you some sort of standard information about the company that you have connected to this case without having to actually open up that company. So if I want to see the email and the phone number, things like that, it's going to display that in the case so I don't have to navigate around. I have all the most important information I need right here. Then I'm going to set my origin. This came in from a phone call. You also have the ability to attach these cases to products, and you also have the ability to set an entitlement. And I will dive into that a bit more later in the session. Essentially, if you have various different products that are in your system and you want to be able to see which ones are having the most issues, et cetera, you can use this to connect those cases to the product so that you can report on that. That way, if you roll out a product and all of a sudden there's a bunch of issues, you can identify that and catch it early, and potentially fix that issue. Come up with a solution so that people don't continue to have those issues. An entitlement is pretty much what a contact or company is allowed. So this is relevant if you have, for example, people can buy support packages. So if they are, if they have purchased a package and they're allowed 30 cases in 6 months, or they're allowed unlimited cases, but it's, there's a time limit to it. They have unlimited cases for 3 months or something along those lines. You can put those entitlements here in the system. And that way, when you're going to create a case, you can see if this individual that is reaching out to you is entitled to service. Now, if you just have a open support system like many companies do, that's not an issue. But again, if you're selling packages or things like that, that is where you can really define what the users are entitled to and what you have to support them with. And then, of course, description, things like that they're not big surprises. Let's save this. Okay, so now that we have saved, there's some things that we see on the screen here that are new. For example, you can see recent cases. And so what recent cases is it's going to show you other related cases in the system. And that could be cases that are also for the same account or contact, or really just any sort of related case that may have occurred that you can use potentially to look at and see how it was resolved. So if there's a product that has the same issue a bunch of times, you're going to see that listed in the recent cases, and you can actually open that up and say, oh, okay, somebody else had this issue, and here's how you solve it. So it's just good to have that visibility there on the screen so that you potentially don't have to go through a lot of the steps that you might to find a resolution if the exact same thing happened with somebody else and you have the resolution right in front of you. You'll also see here on the left side, I have this resolve in, and it has a counter on it that's ticking down. So what that is what we call SLAs, or service level agreements. And that can be defined, and I will show you how to build one of those, in order to keep a acceptable level of support for one of these cases. So you can set it up so that, if a case is created, we want the person who owns that case to be warned that, it is past its resolution period after 1 day. And then an actual failure of the SLA could be 2 days. So essentially what this does is it puts different stages on this case that you can use to identify if first contact is being made within a period of time, if a appointment is being set within a period of time, and if the case is being resolved within the promised level of service. And I will show you how to set one of those up, but that's there so you have it. Anybody who creates a case can see that, and this can be reported on as well. So you know which cases you need to deal with first because they're going to expire, more soon than others. And you can prioritize how you're handling your cases in that method. Another thing I want to point out is up on the top of the screen here, we have these stages. So we have identify, research, and resolve. This is the out-of-the-box standard business process flow. And what these BPFs do is it gives you a way to standardize the process of how this record is being handled. So if you have a set of 4 or 5 different steps that you want every single one of your cases to go through without exception, this is where you can define that. And you can also request particular pieces of information within each of these stages. So if I click this, I can see that I want to make sure that I have my customer and my contact defined. If I click on research, then I can, assign it to others. And we'll talk more about assigning these cases in just a moment here. But this gives you the ability to see what stage a case is in and how long it has been there. This is also beneficial as a training utility. So I have done implementations in the past where these cases have been created by call centers. And there's a lot of new people getting hired, regularly. And, they may have training videos, they may have a manual or something sitting on their desk to teach them how to do things. But to really calm them and calm their nerves and make it so that they are comfortable that they're doing the right thing, you can put your entire process in one of these business process flows. And then if they go into a case and they're not sure exactly what they should be doing, all they have to do is look at what's required in each of those steps. And I have mentioned earlier that everything in Dynamics is customizable. I will say it again, I'm sure you'll probably get annoyed that I keep saying it, but it's very important to understand that. These business process flows, even though this one says identify, research, and resolve, these can be anything that you want. You can build your own custom business process flows that have the information that you want in each of those stages required, and that's what will be displayed to users. So it doesn't have to be identify, research, and resolve. There can be different stages that you can standardize to make sure that your cases are being managed correctly. And that is what your business process flow would be in here. The last thing I want to show actually on the form here is this timeline. This is also a very standard and critical component of any CRM system. This is where we can track our interactions with this case, with the context, with the account, emails that are sent, phone calls that are made. This is where we track all of that. And the benefit to this is, say it's not just one person working on a case. It could be multiple people. And you're going to want to know, if you open a case and you're about to make a phone call to somebody, you're going to want to know if somebody else has called them the same day. That's going to prevent, any sort of embarrassing scenario where you call them and they're like, oh yeah, I just talked to somebody else an hour ago. So this timeline gives you a window into everything that has occurred. So let me create a phone call here. And then I'm going to create a task to follow up with them. And then I will set this to be due on Friday. So that way, if this case is still active, if it has not been resolved, I know and I can see in my activity list that I need to follow up with them and check in and see how we can push this case along. But anybody who opens this is going to see those interactions. And so even if I don't know anything about this case at all, I can open this up and I can see who has talked to who, what about, what the result was, and all the information that is important about this case so that I can pick it up and take over without having to have any sort of transition period of, knowledge. Okay, so we have a case. We have created it. I'm going to save and close it. Now, how do we manage these cases? There are actually various different methods of managing them, but The very simplest one is simply if I go to cases here, I have a list of my active cases. It doesn't specifically have to be my active cases. I can actually change this to see all cases. And then I can see all the different cases that are in the system, who owns them, what their current status is. They have their priority color coded. It's nice and easy to sort that you need. And if you go to any of these, you can do various actions with them really just from this view here. And so I have the ability to assign the case. So if I look at it and I say, oh, I got that, that's for me. And this is, not considering routing rules and things like that we'll be talking about shortly here. Just manual assignment, like, hey, I know somebody who's really good with this particular issue. I'm going to assign it to them. I can also apply a routing rule. And this is a rule that's going to automatically route this case to where it needs to go based on criteria. We'll be building one of those in just a few minutes here. We also have add to queue. Queues we will also discuss. Essentially, this is not assigning it to an individual person. This is assigning it into a queue that can be worked by multiple people. So if it's something like IT support or something along those lines, you can add this into that IT support queue, and multiple people will be able to look at that queue and pick these cases out, and they can tag team them. They can work collaboratively to be able to attend to all of these cases. Of course, we also have the very basic resolve case, cancel case. So these are what you'd expect, really. Essentially, if a case is, hey, they call back and they say, hey, actually, I was looking at this and I realized I made a mistake. There's nothing wrong with the product at all. That's my fault. You can go ahead and cancel this case out, or you can resolve it. Now, when I select one of these, it's going to ask for some details. So if I click resolve, it's going to pop up with some details that are required. And you can tell that they're required by this red asterisk that is next to it. So it's going to ask for what the resolution type is, and then it wants you to type in the details of that resolution. This is for reporting purposes. So later when you come back in and you're looking at a list of cases, you are able to actually say, all right, what was the resolution here? What are the details of that resolution? As I mentioned earlier, when you're in a case and you see related cases, this is the type of thing that you might look at to determine if the same type of case had occurred, how it was fixed. So I would put in all my detail here, and then I would click resolve. And after I do that, it's no longer going to be listed in my cases view because it's no longer active. So that will be removed from the cases that need to be worked, and that case is now completed. You can also automate communication. So say whenever you resolve a case, you want to have an email go out to the person the case was created for, letting them know that the case is resolved and giving them a list of the details about that case and how it was resolved and interactions that occurred during the process. Okay, so that is how you can manage the cases in their most standard form, just from a list here, if I select cases. There are other things to consider as well as you are working these. You do have dashboards. So this is just an example dashboard, but these can be anything that you would like. So really the idea here is if I want people to be able to log into the system, and not have to navigate around to get to things. I want them to see the most critical things to their job all in one spot. This is where I can do that. And so again, this is an example, but I do have a list here of my active cases. I have it filtered to be this quarter, so you can actually change the timeline of what's being presented into this. And then I have some graphs. I can see the cases that I have and what their incident types are. I can see a graph that shows me, how many cases I have that are high priority versus normal versus low. I can also see things like, where are my cases coming from? Here you can see that they're prominently coming in by the phone, but they can be auto-generated. They could even come through a portal on a website. So this is going to show you really just the overview, the umbrella view of your case status. On the right side here, we have some other things that I can click. So it's going to say my activities, my phone calls, my tasks. And if I click one of these, it's going to give me a list of what those activities are. Now, this is nice. You can display this differently. You can have sort of a list view, kind of like what I was showing you earlier with cases. And you can have that on a dashboard, so it's just a big list, and you can filter and sort and et cetera, et cetera. You can display it like this as well. But there's another way to monitor and complete your activities. And that's why in the left navigation here, we have this activities section. And so this is almost like, I guess you could call it sort of like a to-do list. And so what this is going to do is it's going to show me all of my activities that I have in the system. These are exactly the same thing that I created in the timeline on the case earlier. So if I create something in a case on that timeline, it's going to be displayed to me here. And you can see, here's my task that I created earlier for follow-up. And it's going to have due date, start date, and I can sort by things. So if I have, I can sort them by when they're due. So I make sure that I'm talking or taking care of the correct activities in the correct order. You also have the ability to apply different filters here that are specific to activities. So I have this due dropdown, and so I can look at all activities that are still active that are past due. I can look at ones that are due today. And really, regardless of how you filter this due, what you're presented with is a checklist of stuff that you need to do. And as you go through these, as you make those phone calls, as you send those emails, what you're going to see is them dropping off of this list. And so if you're like me, and when you have a list of things to do, you want to just keep plugging away at that list until the list is empty, this is where you can do that. So you don't actually have to open the specific cases to be able to see the activities that are related to them. All of your activities system-wide are going to be presented to you here in this activities view. Okay, we are 35 minutes in. I'm going to take a quick pause and see if there are any questions so far before we go into some of the more advanced topics.
John, we don't have any questions so far, but if anyone is interested or does have a question, please feel free to put it in our Q&A and we can get to it right away.
Yeah, and I'll give you just a couple of minutes. If anybody has anything they want to ask, drop it in there and we will take care of it. I am not a salesperson. I actually build these systems. So if we need to go down rabbit holes, we can. So I'll give about one more minute to see if anybody comes in with anything. Okay, all right. So we have walked through kind of the most basic elements of cases and how do you manage them and create them, et cetera, but there are other things you can do. So I manually created the case that I created earlier, but that's not always what we're going to want. Often, what you're going to see is the need for an automated system where if an email comes in to a particular email address, the system will automatically create a case for them. And that can even assign it automatically as well. And so we'll go through all of that. First things first, let's show you how you can set up the auto creation of cases from an email. Now, in the bottom left here, we have some other areas that we can go to. So I would go to Service Management, and that's going to give me some of my administrative capabilities here that I have within the system to be able to actually get these things created and set up and running. And so if I come in here and I go to Case Settings, I can see this automatic record creation and update rules. Now, if I go into that, we have a couple of examples. And so I will actually open one of these up so I can show you what it looks like. And so at the very basic level, you have what is the name of the rule. In this case, I called it create a case from an incoming email. And then you have this option that says queue to monitor. And so a queue has an email assigned to it. And so if you have a support email, you would create a support queue here and apply that to it so that you can actually just drop that queue here, and then anything that gets sent into that email is going to be monitored and potentially converted. So here in the step 2 section, it says conditions to evaluate and actions to take. It's blank right now. So as a result, any email that comes into that queue is going to automatically turn into a case. But you do have the ability here to put conditions in place so that maybe it doesn't create a case for every email. There's things to consider. There's spam. It could be, really just an email that went to the wrong place, and it doesn't need to be a case. You can put things in place here to evaluate that email that comes through and determine if it wants to create a case and how it does that. So this is where you would set that up, but where do those cases go? So when I created a manual case earlier, I just assigned it to where I wanted it to go. In that case, it was myself. But maybe we have different groups or different queues of people that serve different purposes, and we want these emails to be routed to that. That is where we get into routing rules. If I go to my routing here, I'm going to focus on basic routing rule sets. Now, I have an example here that is routing on type. So let's pull that open and take a look at what that looks like. So there are rule items here. And essentially what that is if this happens, do this. So in this case, I'm looking at the actual type of the case. And once that case gets created, this will automatically look at the type of case and it will send it to the correct queue or the correct person based on what I define in this set here. So you don't actually have to have somebody that's going into a huge list of cases and making sure that they all get sent off to the right people. You just put these routing rules in place, and when those cases come in, they're going to get routed to who they need to go to. Now, they can be routed to users, they could be routed to teams, or they can also be routed to queues. And I want to show you what that looks like. So I discussed earlier that there can be queues. And so essentially, here, I'm going to do all of them. Essentially, we can have IT support, we could have product support, we could have all these different groups of people that are working these cases, and they need to be able to go in and work these cases together. There could be 10 people, 20 people. I've seen 300 people. And these cases come in and they have to be managed. So what a queue does is it gives a place for the people that are members of that queue to come in and claim these cases and work them. And so really all they have to do is they come into their queue and they're going to see a list of all the cases that are assigned to that queue. Now you can see this worked by column here on the right side. What that shows is that this particular case has been claimed. So if I come in here and I'm looking through these and I see one inquiry about a product, that is perfect. I will use that. I can handle that case. I want to claim this. I would simply select it and then I would pick it. So you have your options of what you can do with these cases up on the top screen here. So if I pick that, you have the option of leaving it in the queue and just showing that you are working it, or you can actually remove it from the queue so nobody else goes in and tries to work on it. So I will leave it in the queue and I will pick it. And you can now see that I am listed as the person who is working that case. So this gives you almost SharePoint-like collaboration abilities where you can have lots of people working on a big list of things and they're not going to be stepping on each other's feet. Additionally, if I have picked one of these, I can release it. So if I thought it was something different, or I get sick and I have to leave, and I have all these cases that are picked by me, I can then come back in and I can release these back to the queue. So that way they go back into that same process and can be claimed by other members of the queue. Okay, so before the next part, I'm going to open a case. Now I mentioned both of these items earlier, but I want to dive more into detail into them. So again, we have this resolve in section on the case. And then we also have these entitlements. I described what each of those are. Resolve in, this SLA, that's going to be the standard that you are expected to meet when working these cases. And the entitlements are there for if, again, people have those agreements, or if, your support is not free, if they have to get packages or things like that, this is where you can put that in. But how do we set those up? How do we define those? Once again, I'm going to go back to my admin section. And then down here, I have service terms. Now, if I go into service terms, you'll see I have entitlements here, and I also have SLAs. So let's show you what each of those look like. So we're going to use a base level SLA. Actually, we'll use this tester one. And so what you're doing with these SLAs is you have various steps that you can define within it. And so your standard SLA KPI will be, let's say, resolved by. So I want to make sure that it is resolved within a promised period of time. And so you can see here, I have it set to warn the user after 4 hours, and the SLA is failed after 2 days. And so that is what feeds that timer that you saw on the case. And you can also report and pull lists of case based on where they are in their existing SLA. after I've created one of these and I've activated it, any of the cases that I create are then going to have this SLA applied to it. So it's going to start ticking down. And again, that just shows you visually how long you have to be able to resolve that case in order to make sure that you're meeting that standard level of service. Entitlements look a bit different. And so I have a standard entitlement here. And if I click that, I can define what the entitlement terms are. So the entitlement is going to be on cases, and my allocation type is the number of cases. So in this particular case, I am going to allow somebody a set defined number of cases that they're able to have while this entitlement is active. And so that can be 15 or 20 or 30 within a 6-month period of time. And again, when you create a case and you apply that customer's entitlement to it, it's going to let you know how many cases they have left in their entitlement, how much time is left in the entitlement, just to make sure that you are, meeting those requirements. Okay, and the last thing I want to make sure I show, and this is very important, are these knowledge articles. So no surprises here. The idea behind knowledge articles is essentially for you to be able to store all the information in your system to be able to be pulled and searched and reused by other people based on search criteria. Or it could even be if you open up a case and there are related cases and they potentially were resolved by a knowledge article, it's going to pop up on your screen. You'll see it. It will suggest that as a solution. And so over time, you build this knowledge base out. And then what happens is when I'm in a case, let's do this one again. I'm able to actually go to my knowledge articles section here. And a couple of things are going to happen. Of course, AI. How could we not have AI involved? And so what this is going to do is it's going to look for various keywords, things like that, and it's going to pop up articles that it thinks might be good solutions. This can be beneficial because it does a pretty good job popping those articles up and saying, hey, this seems related. And that does make it quicker and easier to find things. But you can also just search. So if I search by test, I get no results, but let's try product. There we go. And again, key phrases. You can put that in here, and then you're going to get a big list of all the knowledge articles in your system. So if I'm on the phone with somebody regarding this case, I can scroll through this and be like, oh, this looks like the answer. This looks like exactly what would solve this problem. And if you select one, you actually have this ability to just email that. So if I click email content, what it's going to do is it's going to take that knowledge article and plug it into an email. And then it's going to automatically fill in the email of the contact of the case and put my details in there as well. And so really all you have to do is just review it and send it. And that gives them the solution that they're looking for. Then they look at that, they read through it, they say, oh yeah, this does solve the issue. They respond back and say, yep, that did it. Problem solved. Then you can resolve that case. So these knowledge articles just give you the ability to make sure that people don't have to go through the same steps over and over and over again if something has been done already. You can really just define what the solutions are and plug them into your knowledge base, and you can then use that to resolve these cases. Additionally, if a knowledge article was used to resolve a case that will be related to the case, And then later you can go in and see which knowledge articles are, solving the most cases, which ones are the most important, and make sure that you're maintaining them. Sometimes Microsoft has updates, things like that. So, you might have something that is a solution at one point, and then an update comes out and it's a little different. You know what you need to go in and update, what's most important. Okay. All right, so we have talked about the general layout of Customer Service Hub. We have talked about the case management that is part of it, and how you can use that to tend to your cases. We've also talked about, the creation and the auto creation using emails. We've talked about routing rules, queues, SLAs, entitlements, and the knowledge articles. And so now, while we have a few minutes left, I want to open up the floor. And again, if you have any questions or you want me to dive into anything, just drop that into our QA, and I will take care of it.
John, there aren't any questions in there right now. I am also going to add our client success email address in case something comes up later. You are welcome to send questions to this email address and we can get them over to John and then get them answered for you.
Great. I'll give just another couple of minutes to make sure that there is nothing that we're not answering. But exactly like was just said, if there's something you think of later and you're like, oh, I should have asked that, just reach out to us. We are happy to reach back to you. All right. Well, looks like I can give you a few minutes back. I very much appreciate you all being here today. I hope this has been useful. And again, please, if you are interested in this, or if you have questions or you want to pursue potentially, putting Customer Service Hub in place for your company, please do reach out. We are here and we're happy to help.
Thanks, John.
Thank you. All right. Have a good one, everybody. Bye-bye.